in my drive and my passion for caring for mama, I say that we're supporting moms at home, at work, and in times of hardship. And to date, I haven't really had this type of conversation more in depth about what that means in a work environment, because the reality is we're going in and out of work as parents. I know I did with my two, went in, went out, was laid off, I burned out, I quit. And there is this growing need for flexibility, and for obviously for agencies like yours that curates really seasoned and talented professionals who are looking for more flexibility or looking to grow their own businesses, but still have a lot to offer, right? And that goes for parents, that goes for any professional really. And what I love too is what you shared about, I didn't know this stat, that 50% of the workforce is going to be in the gig economy by 2027. Now that we're in 2025, that's only 2 years from now, and that blows my mind. So I guess with that, I wanted to first have you share a little bit about your background and what led you to, I think we have a sense of what led you to start Gig Talent, but if you could share that first, then we'll dive into some more specifics about, corporate wellness and all that fun stuff.
Thanks so much. Yeah, Kim, it's really amazing to see everything you're doing, and it's an honor to be here. It's really funny. I mean, I think we've known each other since we were like 3 or 5 or something. But so yeah, I mean, my story, it's really interesting. I did the whole corporate exec thing. I was a single mom for 10 years, and so building a career, in a Fortune 50 organization while being a mom and wanting to coach basketball and those kinds of things, taught me a lot of things. But I was an HR executive, and so setting culture and setting the tone, helping people with kind of work life, whether it's balance, integration, whatever word you want to use, just navigating those things, setting benefits and trying to create a healthy work environment was something that was really something I was focused on. And I think it's really important we're going to go into it around how things are changing and what companies are doing and what employees and parents can do. But Gig Talent kind of came from that. I decided, I had left corporate, made the leap, was consulting, loved it, and recognized kind of both the fear that comes with that, but also the freedom in reshaping our lives. Many of us, someone said to me actually last year, they said, it's hard to control your energy in somebody else's system. And I was like, wow, that's really powerful. But we're so conditioned that that's what you do. You go work in an organization and all the constructs that come with that, benefits and structure and a paycheck every other Friday or whatever. We get used to those things. And so as we think about how do we be intentional parents? How do we be intentional partners? How do we take care of ourselves? And then going through, the collective experience we had with COVID and people reassessing the role that work plays in their lives, I think it's been really fascinating, the impact on organizations. So Gig Talent, we launched it pre-COVID to help people who were brave enough to make that leap into consulting or coaching out of, a prior corporate career and be their go-to-market partner. And it really blossomed because of that growth that you mentioned, with so many people choosing to work that way. The idea of fractional as a concept being more understood by organizations, and we can talk about the strategy around that. But I think the biggest thing is just wanting people to do the work they love. I had my peers and friends who were CHROs would come and they'd say, I want to do what you're doing, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid of sales and business development. I just want to do the work that I love. And I was like, well, I don't think that everybody should be a consultant, but I definitely don't think anybody should stay where you hate your job. So it's about recognizing choice.
Yeah, yes. And I think I also was thinking about how Gig Talent as an organization, as an agency, as this kind of central space, you're really providing care on both sides, right? So for those employees that you're talking about who want to do it, but they're not sure. I have a lot of friends too who are like, Kim, I wish I could do, just go out on my own and do my own thing. But a lot of them are the breadwinners, or, there's so many circumstances that prevent us from doing that. But so I think there's two things. There's an opportunity, to partner with agencies like Gig Talent to get yourself in the right space and in the right environment to do your best work. But there's also an opportunity, like we talked about, for companies and HR directors, managers, wellness directors, I mean, there's a whole kind of surge in employees taking on full-time wellness roles in companies as well. And I think that's telling that not only are, we're all burned out, that's a real thing, we're all leaving, we're all trying to leave and figure out new flexible work modalities. And so I'm curious to hear what you've seen work really well, or what you've seen really shift within a corporate environment where people are actually staying and working the 9 to 5. But like, what have companies done to really better support their employees, and particularly parents, because that's the conversation we're having here today, but that they see that if they can do a little bit more, that maybe from a retention standpoint, they actually keep the talent and they can still thrive. So I want to hear what you've seen and kind of.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. This is like the most exciting time to, I think, be in this space because of the innovation, disruption, change that's happening. So if anybody's just like using their old playbook, it's just not working anymore, right? And so we know that that many people are struggling. We know that the demographics of our workforce are changing, and just overall preferences and expectations of the workforce have shifted. And I think companies are struggling. I mean, there's no doubt we hear all the return to work noise and the back-to-back meetings and all those things. And so I think where I'm seeing companies do it well is when they're just being honest, right? They're recognizing that there's a dramatic pace of change, and they're recognizing the need to shift, but that it's also difficult, and that it's balanced with, we're here to do whatever the cool thing is that we're here to do as an organization. And so we need people to show up, and we want to be able to respond to their individual needs. And so, there's two sides of that. And part of it is parents is thinking about, what do you need? Do you need to come in, start a half hour later because you do drop off in the morning? Or I remember like I had to get there by 6 o'clock, there was like $1 a minute or whatever. And you're late when you're late to pick up, and your kid's the last one there. Like, that's the worst feeling. So whatever the things are, the parameters that work for you, I think being able to be clear about what those are is really important, because then you'll know if you're working in an environment that's going to be able and willing to support that. Sometimes it's just about blocking it out on your calendar. Now, there were times, because I wanted to grow in my career, I was logging back on at night, and that worked for me, because it also meant that when I wanted to leave at 4 and go coach a practice, I could do that, or go to her play or whatever. And so it's kind of like the accountability on both sides. And then from the employer side, I think just this recognition of people as whole people, and the kind of the individualization or customization of both needs and situations and preferences, creating space for dialogue, helping really educate leaders and managers, who, by the way, are people too and are going through their own stuff. But how do we help them understand how to step into these conversations without having to feel like that means they're going to get a bunch of requests that they can't honor, because nobody wants to feel that way. But how do you navigate those conversations in a healthy way that gets to a good place, and people feel like they're being supported in things that are really important to them, and also to do their best work?
Yeah, I think that, depending on what I don't want to say side, but where you're sitting in this conversation, because people tuning in could be the ones running an HR organization within a company, right? And they're trying to figure out, okay, how do I adjust, support my employees, but still, hold everybody accountable and meet my goals and meet our company's goals. And so I can see, there's that. Everybody has some sort of struggle as we're going through major shifts. And obviously we're in a major shift, like you said. So it makes me wonder too, from an HR leadership standpoint, what resources are available for leaders and for that educational piece that you're talking about? Because it's so huge. It's like there's some things that we just do instinctively as people, or who we are. If we're good communicators, if we do that just naturally, I feel like then it's an easier transition. But for those who are sort of, they're so accustomed to the traditional way of doing things and like structures and systems, and like, no, we have to do it this way. What do you feel like is the best resource for those types of leaders who are really wanting to make change but don't know where to start?
Yeah, I mean, that's why one of the reasons I'm so proud of the work that our consultants and coaches here at Gig Talent, because we happen to be in that human capability space focused on talent, organizations, and leadership. And obviously, HR is kind of a mechanism for all that. But like we actually do that work, right? And so, I think it's about it really is about education, and about framing it in your individual culture along with your values and your purpose. Like we're here, you have a company doing something, right? You're either creating something or you're delivering something, whatever the what you're doing is. Um, and that needs to be made the most important thing. But then the how in the values and the culture, and really thinking, how do we keep alignment around and some expectations around what does that look like, but then allow for that customization. And so I think it comes back to training. It can be coaching if a leader, a lot of times people aren't bad. It's just what's made them successful for the last 20 years might have been one way that, quite frankly, just isn't effective today. And it's not because this new generation is demanding or whatever the taglines are. It's really, because the world has shifted.
Mhm.
And I would even argue that kind of the pre-COVID world wasn't sustainable anyway. It just kind of smacked us in the face to recognize it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing like a pandemic or natural disasters.
Right.
It's just that when things happen, it's like it does when dramatic major life changes happen, it really forces us to stop, which we need. We're running so fast, whether we're running organizations or whether we're running households, and we have young kids running around. We're all I'd like to think are trying to do our best work, and so
Yes.
how can we shift and help create those environments over time that will allow parents to do their best work but not kill themselves in the process, and allow leaders to shift and still do their best work, and feel like they can support their employees without going overboard. So I feel like there has to be some middle ground there. And we were talking earlier, Jamie, about like one thing that I'm working on with companies through Caring for Mama is repurposing all these beautiful products that I'm sourcing from women-owned companies and putting them in packages that are just for the woman or just for parents, who are coming back from leave, for example. It's a very specific time where there's a lot of emotions, a lot of transition, a lot of like uncertainty of like, how am I going to do this both at home and at work? And so being able to, just one small example of what companies can do and are starting to do, is like send a letter to like if you're already sending a letter to your employees who are on leave and you want to make sure they feel supported and welcomed back and they have the resources and benefits at their fingertips, but like sending that with a box that's curated and it's there to support a parent's well-being. Like it's a little thing, but it's so meaningful for the recipient, right? Like as another mom, any moms or parents or caregivers listening, it's like receiving something that's just for you. Every box says you're doing a great job when they open it. And it's like psychologically, emotionally, mentally, everything. It's like, wow, they took an extra step. Like they really care about me as a person. I think you were saying that something like that, or it could be any number of things, but just a little difference says, wow, it's the personalization, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
it's the intentionality,
and
right? And the recognition and the like I as you said that, like you're doing a good job. I can imagine I remember being a new mom, kind of in the oh my gosh, what did I do phase. And that like could make you cry, right? Like that just hearing that message from someone that somebody like your company thought to like send you something to care for yourself and just like an acknowledgement, it's very powerful. And it, to your point, it might not seem like a really significant difference from things they may already be doing, but it's through that personalized, and intentional lens. And even your business model, right? Sourcing from women-owned businesses, like thinking about if there's intentionality there. And I think that is what people are like. I don't know. You send me a check the box, and that's going to feel different than a like. I really wanted to send you something that would make you feel good. Those are different,
yeah,
right? And so, yeah,
same thing, but with different intentionality, right? Like there
yeah,
is, okay. Yeah, I think so. What, maybe we can step into some specific maybe tips or specific ways that companies um, can start to make these shifts?
One really specific thing I think is to relieve ourselves of like having to know it all or have it all figured out, right? There isn't a playbook for this. So the way to start is to invite people to the conversation. And I think that sometimes is uncomfortable because as leaders or HR people or as organizations, we like feel like we're supposed to have the answers, right? We're supposed to know these things. We need to create the plan and roll it out. And I think right now in specific things, actually asking what people want or asking what the problems or tensions that people are feeling, not again that we're just going to take all your orders and magically be able to solve them all, because that's not realistic either, but inviting people to the conversation. And then it also invites an opportunity about roles and responsibilities and how do we share, kind of have a uh, ownership in the solution, or in, look, we want to do something, we want to do something that's meaningful, we don't want to assume what we think is meaningful. So inviting to that discussion, co-creation, like collective experiments. Hey, we're going to try this for a year or 6 months, and we're going to get feedback, and it's going to be an ongoing feedback loop, and we'll improve it, right? And I think I think people respect that too, because one, they feel heard. We actually get to tailor it based on the feedback we hear, make it more meaningful to your employee population, and just that, no matter what the it is,
Mhm.
makes people more invested.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think too, it's just some of it seems so it's like, communicate. And
Right.
I communicator, I have a PR background. I think, well, of course, that's what we do, right? But I take for granted that being able to open up a space, like a safe space to share, and not only like that there has to be some work that goes into that first, right? You have to create a space where people even want to show up and feel safe to share. And then as leaders, and obviously we're talking about the HR teams and wellness teams specifically, but this goes for executive leadership too,
100%.
because we all know that we don't like to think of top down, right? I mean, some probably do, but I think the landscape has shifted into a flatter organizations where there's a little more democracy and sharing and co-creating, but for those organizations that still have a pretty clear hierarchy out of necessity, like executive leadership that says from the top, this is the space that we're creating for our employees. This is what we're doing together to reach our mission as a company. And then how that goes from those words to the leaders throughout the organization to then the employees, and then how it comes back. It's like, I think there's a lot of disconnect sometimes that happens. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to follow
Yeah.
through. And so
Yeah.
where
There's so I think about this stuff a lot, right? One of the things that was really interesting is that sometimes we make assumptions. So like I believe these things as the senior executives, and I'm saying these things and they're part of our values and I really mean it, and I just assume people are going to do it. And even if everybody, like you said, has good intent and is trying to do it, they don't always recognize, one, they don't review maybe existing things that might not land the way they need. So there's really a need to kind of take an intentional look at everything and through that new lens, right? And or they don't feel empowered, or they think things like it's budget related. Like not everything has to cost more money. I mean, your point about sending a more empathetic, connected letter instead of like a dear new parent, or whatever, like that, those are different things. um but I was really, so I might be a little naive, but I was like, no, companies like are flexible, right? And I had this example. I'm just going to share an example. So someone said to me, there were two females on the executive team. One was the CEO and the other was, like, I think, the CFO. And the CFO had young parents and had said, oh, I don't know, on Thursdays I need to leave at 4 o'clock or something, but then I'll log back on. And had just set that expectation, which is what I just suppose that I'm like, and I think healthy, good environments will adjust. And that's my assumption, right? That's the lens I have. Well, I heard this example where the CEO said, okay, but then every Thursday would go place a physical piece of paper with a request on the CFO's desk at like 4 p.m. or 4:30 or whatever, like after she was already gone. And it obviously seems intentional. And like, first of all, who gives a physical piece of paper with a request anymore, right? You couldn't have sent an email, but, and it's every time when she leaves the office. So I was like, oh, so there's still people doing that. And then to hear it was like a woman to woman doing, I was just blown away that that would still happen. Um, so I say that only in the, you know, if that happens, that's a different situation. And that potentially, if that's your supervisor doing something like that, obviously I encourage a conversation. But if there's a values level disconnect, you know, that becomes potentially unsustainable. So, you know, we have to look out for ourselves too.
Yes. Well, and that's where I'm curious about, where the resource is for, outside support and leadership coaching and education, because there is, especially for companies that have been around longer, there's like a historical sort of tie to how things have always been done. And so I think it sounds like Gig Talent, you have resources through your professionals and coaches, right? So there's resources through Gig Talent. So maybe tell us a little bit about where companies who might be interested can find you and your resources, and then other resources that come to mind. Whether it's associations, I know there's a ton of, I see this Wellco, there's a new wellness institute that formed.
There's a lot. Yeah. There's some very specific organizations, like you just mentioned, that are specifically focused in that. So Gig Talent, we're at gigtalentagency.com. And the kind of work that I see us doing is facilitating leadership sessions around like these shifts and helping them kind of understand and then maybe self-reflect and have dialogue around, like, align around how do they want to infuse this in the culture. And sometimes that goes outside the room with individual coaching for specific leaders who might have populations that, or just maybe they need their level of shift is a little bit bigger, right? And so a coach can help support them in that. We see it in strategic planning sessions, even board alignment, and really like trying to get board alignment, both about what their role is, how they set the tone, and then, it kind of flows through your culture from the top, as you said. And so what I like about the Gig Talent consultants and coaches is that they can meet the organization where they are and design something appropriate to help really the leaders mindset and intention, and then also can partner because we have HR experts too, so they can partner in like that implementation. How do you bring that through the employee experience? And so whether it's wellness or leaves or process or even coaching the HR teams.
Well, I'm very excited that that is also part. So the conversation here is about, kind of what's the landscape, how things are shifting, what we can do differently on sort of both sides of the equation. But that you actually have these resources within your organization is just a cherry on top. So thank you for that. Also, for those who are listening who are on more of the, maybe the working mom who is either already working on her own business and freelancing efforts, or thinking about and wanting to go out on her own, maybe you can talk a little bit about the resources for the Gig Talent worker side, what that looks like.
Yeah. So our agency is kind of specific to, I call it human capabilities, but it's all things HR. It's anything under talent, leadership, organization, really helping organizations be better and grow and transform and achieve their business results. So that's what we're kind of focused on. And so if you're in that space and you want to go in, we definitely can help. But I I am kind of always willing to have conversations with people who are considering it, because I do think I can still tune into that pit in the stomach when you're leaving the construct of corporate America, and it's a big decision. So there's tons of resources out there about consulting. Just I think that the recognition that it doesn't have to be a lonely gig. You don't have to do it alone. There are organizations like ours in other functions, fractional CMO type or marketing groups or legal or finance really pretty much any vertical or function that you're in. There's similar type organizations that you can partner with. You can, part of it is this your own mindset and identity shift, and then thinking about what is important to you. Some people want to go like double their income from what they were making in house. Some people want to work, 15 hours a week, and they have goals around that. And so thinking about, what you're trying to achieve, how it fits into your life, what you need to make, and then leveling up over fear. That's like a big one. And if I have the time, I'm willing to talk to anybody about that, because I think that's a game changer just in life, not only in our careers.
That's true. Well, and when parents can come down, their cortisol levels can come down and the stress levels can come down, if that's tied into the work environment, which, let's be honest, a lot of it does come down to that, then, being able to separate and be on your own. Also, for those companies that are shifting their thinking, they're then going to be more open to a freelance or fractional offering, right? So they're still going to get that great talent. It just doesn't look the same on the ledgers, right? But it does.
I think companies are getting smarter. They're really evolving their talent strategies to recognize, like, oh, I can get this really highly qualified professional and I don't have to compromise, but maybe I don't, maybe it isn't a full-time headcount. And so it's like a win-win for everyone. I think companies are definitely getting smarter. And the other thing that kind of just resonated as you were talking, Kim, is that just because you make the leap, it doesn't automatically change your life. So, I mean, it changes a lot of things, but you still have to design your life, right? So, how much do you want, like the intentionality around how do you want to be around your kids? I know, like when I look back, I probably wasn't as present as I could have been, because I was balancing so many things. So, if you're carving out time, what are you carving out time for? What's important to you? What does that work look like? It's, a lot of people say, they leave because they think they want to have kind of more time, but if you fill it up, it's going to fill up, right? So and now you're on your own and you can't blame the company. So
That's
it's
right.
like,
I know.
you know
Right. No matter which way, no matter which path we choose,
yeah, that intentionality and just getting clear for yourself. The other thing is, sometimes you can create that internal, like you don't have to leave to create that. It's some of that is the self-reflection and discipline to try to create the space, and then trying to do it in the, if you don't know for sure that you want to go do your own thing, maybe try it within the
yeah.
construct of your role, or have the conversation. Companies, I mean, a lot of companies are like, oh, you want to go part-time? We might be able to make that work. They are thinking different, right?
Don't assume, to your point
Yep.
earlier,
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
their end, no matter what, let's not assume until we have the open conversation and allow it to actually happen first, and then make decisions. I think that's a good life lesson, not just in work, but so I was going to say too, and I'll include highlights from our conversation in when I post this in the comment or in the caption. I can think of my words, but I'll also include the link to get talent and where to find Jamie and her team. And also, I want to mention the space I'm in right now, actually recording this, is herahub.com for female entrepreneurs who, and actually even work from home employees. So you could be working full time for a company and maybe they aren't based where you are. I happen to be in San Diego, but it's actually like a workspace and a community to support each other. So herahub.com is one. Also for women thinking, again, caring for mama. So I'm going with that lens. Motheruntitled.com is a great resource. She's got some flexible job postings on her site, as well as the Mom Project. And there's a lot of resources through that group too. So I'll add those in here as well. And then anything else Jamie thinks of between now and when I post it, I'll add those in as well. But I'm just so happy that we were able to make this work, Jamie. Before we close, I'll just say, is there anything else that we did not talk about that you wanted to mention before we close?
No, I just, I think that the idea of creating this community where we can support each other and navigate the complexities that life is bringing us today is really important. So, sometimes we get caught up in kind of whatever we're dealing with, and the reminder that there's probably people around you who would want to help, I think is something to keep in mind. So whether it's a professional organization like Gig Talent, a service and product organization like Caring for Mama, or the community that you're creating here online, I think that there's an opportunity for us to reach out and care for people and help in a way that will make a difference in people's lives. So thanks for creating that space.
Of course, Jamie, I'm grateful to know you and to have known you forever, and so happy that you're doing the work you're doing. And yes, we will. I'm going to continue these conversations about addressing caring for moms, again, at home, at work, and in times of hardship. So we'll continue having these conversations. For those of you listening, if there's any people or organizations or companies we should be talking to further the conversation, please reach out. You can reach me at hello@caringformama.co, and we will see you next week. I'll be recording another session next week. So I hope you have a good weekend, and thanks again. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.